to Wilcox Nursery and Landscape. I'm Bruce Turley, I'm the owner, and thank you for tuning into this. I'm always happy to get to talk about native plants, why they're so important, for everything that we need to sustain in our environment, from our pollinators all the way up the chain of life. So today we're going to be talking about native plants. My objective is always to help familiarize people with some of our Florida native plants. We're going to talk about some of the different categories. Of course, we can only talk about a very small number of our native plants, so we're just going to give you a really light taste of some of our Florida natives today. When we get through the program, if you're interested in buying native plants, you might want to check out plantrealflorida.org. We also have the Real Florida Gardener that you can find all of the retailers of Florida native plants in the state of Florida. We are, as Wilcox Nursery and Landscape, proud members of the Florida Association of Native Nurseries. Shamelessly, we have a full page ad of our information just inside the cover. So that could be a great resource for you. Alright, so in ground covers, the first one I'm going to talk about is this one right here. It's called hammock twinflower. Hammock twinflower is also oftentimes in references called swamp twinflower. It's not a name I particularly have gravitated to because it's actually, I think, a little misleading. It does like moist environments. It naturally grows in some reduced light or shaded environments, but it actually is quite forgiving, which is why I'm not as fond of the swamp twinflower name. It actually can tolerate all the way out to full sun and average conditions, but the more sunlight that it gets, the more moisture it needs. We found it to be a really popular native ground cover. I think really popular in general because of the fact that it's just such a nice, tidy looking plant. It has the nice little lavender flowers throughout the year. It probably is a larval plant for butterflies. We're not 100% that we've gotten positive proof on that, but it is mowable. It is something that you can walk across as a lawn effect, and it tends to have a fairly permanent type of nature about it. So again, a really great low-growing ground cover. It is going to vary a little bit in height depending on the conditions that it's growing in. Moisture, richer, more organic soils tend to produce a taller plant, probably up to 10 or 12 inches. Under drier conditions or poorer soils, it's going to stay shorter. And again, as I mentioned earlier, you can mow it or control the height. Just a really nice ground cover, though. It has a very nice cultured look to it. So again, hammock twinflower. The next one is another one that can grow in reduced light or shaded conditions. This one is called creeping sage. It's also known in the references as river sage. Again, I'm not real fond of that name because I think, again, it's a little misleading. I actually see it growing in understory primarily in shady hammocks, but I've also seen it growing in dry sandhill environments where there was some shade. So it does obviously have some adaptability to some pretty dry conditions. One of the things I really like about it is that, number one, it grows thick, it grows reasonably aggressive, so it's pretty good at competing with weedy plants. But it also has a bright green foliage, so it helps to lighten up those darker landscape settings. It produces an electric little blue flower that you practically have to stick your head in it to see it, but it is really charming when you see it at close range. Cassius blue butterflies come to nectar on it, so you'll see them darting around the plant. And again, like any good ground cover, at least in my book, a good ground cover is one that you can mow it or control the height on it, and certainly you're going to have to keep it edged to keep it contained. The height on it, again, varies with site conditions. I've seen it growing in the wild where it just hugs the ground in really dry environments, but in a landscape where it's being irrigated or where the soil might be a little better organic soil and it's getting good moisture, it can get up to probably as tall as probably 18, 20 inches, but can be kept smaller. Again, one warning, since we're on the topic of ground covers, is that ground covers can be very serviceable as a replacement for turf in some cases. Turf, though, is most often used as a monoculture, where it's the only plant in a given large area. And a healthy landscape is always a landscape that's diverse and is sustaining as many different pollinators and as many different things that should be in our environment as possible. Having a diverse landscape also helps to prevent problems with disease and pests. And when you have just one thing in a large volume, it just leaves you very exposed. So a diverse landscape is always a much healthier approach. So if you've had the idea that you just want to simply replace a large area of turf with ground covers, well, at the very minimum, you need a diversity of ground covers, but ideally you want to use a diversity of plants at different height levels, producing different benefits environmentally. So again, this is creeping sage, another one that you can use for shade or in sun, just needs more moisture if you're using it in sun. The next plant group that again are ground covers that you can use in shade. One that has been well known for years is this Pepperomia obtusifolia, sometimes called baby rubber plant or Florida Pepperomia. You've seen this in the foliage market for years, where it's used as a potted plant or a hanging basket. The Florida populations, though, will work particularly well as a landscape plant in total shade environments. But it is absolutely imperative that they have all shade and no sunlight on them. The plant is a fairly well-behaved plant. You can use it in areas where you want something fairly easy to control. And it's just a really beautiful, rich foliage. It is just really easy to control. It typically wants to creep along the ground. In the wild, it's usually epiphytic, growing in high humidity swamps on nursery logs, and is growing epiphytically in that environment, but it does very well in the ground as well. Another one that is a little bit more northern occurring than the Florida Pepperomia is this one. Again, common names are always kind of dicey, but this one goes by a variety names: fuzzy Pepperomia, low Pepperomia, probably little Pepperomia. But it's a little smaller leaf than the other Pepperomia that we just looked at. Again, it tends to stay low. It doesn't tend to be quite as even as aggressive growing as the other Pepperomia, and I shouldn't really put it that way because Pepperomias are just simply not aggressive growing. But this is another one that we've seen for years in the foliage market, where it's used as a potted plant, sold as a house plant. But again, in an all-shade environment in the landscape, it can be a great plant, and that's Pepperomia humilis. This is a fairly, well, it is a definitely new Pepperomia to us in the native plant market. This is Pepperomia glabella. The only common name that I've seen for this one is called cypress Pepperomia, probably because there's some association with it growing near cypress trees or such. Not real sure where that common name comes from. Like the other Pepperomias, it does grow epiphytically oftentimes in the wild, and is very adaptable, though, to being grown terrestrially as a ground cover in full shade. It does need to be totally out of the sunlight, and it's just a beautiful plant. You can have it as a nice container plant or as a nice ground cover for those shaded areas. So from there, we're going to probably want to move into the sunlight. Sometimes plants that can act as ground covers, you might find listed as a wildflower. This one in particular is a good case that you'll often find it listed as a wildflower. I personally tend to think of it more as a ground cover because it does spread pretty extensively and fairly aggressively. This one again does need to be in as much sunlight as possible. As you can hopefully see, it has that beautiful purple flower. It blooms throughout the year in central Florida, and it tends to be very cold hardy. It is one of those plants that produces this much color without dying back. It's verbena family, so it's a great butterfly attractor. And like a lot of the creeping ground covers, you know, your biggest concern is usually that it can be one of the higher maintenance items in the landscape and trying to keep it controlled to the space that you've intended it to be in. Beech verbena is just, it's a beautiful little plant, and again, it's great for color, but unlike the other hammock twinflower creeping sage that we discussed already, this one I would not use as a lawn replacement. It needs to be used in smaller areas because it's not going to tolerate being walked on. It's not going to tolerate being mowed. You can prune it back, but it's not one that you can throw a mower on or walk on it. Nice one for adding color and butterflies to the landscape. Another one that is a great butterfly plant for a ground cover is matchweed, also known as frog fruit. Probably a couple other names. Phyla, it's genus name. It's Phyla nodiflora. This again is a member of the verbena family, like the beech verbena that we just looked at with the purple flowers. But this one produces these flower stems with a little set of flowers on top of it. Unfortunately, I don't see any on this plant, but it looks like a little matchstick or match head, hence the name matchweed. Again, great butterfly attractor. It's larval plant for fan crescents and common buckeye butterflies. And if you have this growing in your yard, which again, it's super adaptable, it'll tolerate part day sun, but the more sun, the better for the flowering, and probably for a good butterfly attraction. Again, it's a pretty aggressive grower. It is one of the ones that you can mow. It's probably pretty commonly mowed in a lot of people's yards where it does naturally occur. And it is an aggressive spreader, so it will require some edging. But again, it's a very adaptable ground cover, so it makes a really great choice. Another one that has been popular for quite a long time now is our native sunshine mimosa. If I push this maybe a little forward, you can see what's left of the blooms are starting to fold up with the time of the day, getting a little bit spent, but they look like these, when you look at them during the daylight, when they're fully open, the petals on it look like these little fiber optic fibers, and it's got these little gold tips to it, really lovely in the bright sunlight and in their full display. This one is, again, an aggressive spreader. It is one that you can use as a turf replacement. It is a true sensitive plant. At this time of day, you can see that the foliage is closed up on it. It's that very soft foliage, feels great in bare feet. But besides the really showy blooms, and it does bloom throughout the hot months of the year, this one has that sensitive plant leaf, and when you get a thunderstorm come up on a summer afternoon, those raindrops start to come down and those fleas will fold up. It's one Achilles heel, I think, because of that little delicate foliage, is that it lets a lot of sunlight in, so weeds are a little bit more challenging with sunshine mimosa, but it really is a beautiful ground cover and very popular with people that know it. Another ground cover plant that again is kind of more like the beech verbena in a sense, because you really can't mow it. It really doesn't like to be walked on. It can be pruned, but you just wouldn't want to put a mower on it, and it doesn't tolerate that foot traffic, is pineland heliotrope. There's quite a few, of course, heliotropes that are cultivated. This one is pretty common in our area. It grows all the way from mangrove systems to pine flatwoods. I've seen them in scrub environments. So they're pretty widespread in a variety of conditions. Super easy to grow, pretty adaptable. Always looks a little strange in a pot, but in the ground it becomes a gorgeous plant that people just can't resist. It's a beautiful plant grown out, and it does grow out pretty quickly. Again, it's a good butterfly attractor. This white form is probably our most common form of it, and there is a nice saturated yellow colored one as well. Another native ground cover, maybe sometimes listed as a wildflower, is beech sunflower or dune sunflower. There are several forms that come from different areas of the state, but this one has been wildly popular for quite a long time now. And it's very popular because it is a dune plant, so it's adapted to extremely deeply dry, drained conditions. It's one of those ultimate plants for those really harsh environments. And if anything, it won't tolerate excessive water or being in an area that gets excessively wet. It's got to be very well drained. Again, the more sunlight, the better. Blooms year-round, very aggressive spreader. We've seen individual plants in this probably get 10 and 12 feet across given time. So you want to use it judiciously in areas that can accommodate its size and not have to fight it. But again, it's just a beautiful ground cover and lots of color with it. If you really want a dynamic 365, 24/7, plant native plants in your landscape like our firebush here and our goldenrods, and you will bring all kinds of life to your landscape.